The ambulance sirens could be heard racing toward Quincy Jones Studio on that sweltering August afternoon in 1987. Inside, Michael Jackson knelt beside his unconscious backup dancer, Maria Santos, who had just collapsed during an intense rehearsal sequence. What happened next showed that behind the glittering glove was a man who understood that no performance was worth risking someone's life. But this wasn't just about one dancer's medical emergency. This was about a moment when Michael Jackson had to choose between his perfectionist drive and his humanity. What he decided in those critical minutes would revolutionize how the entire entertainment industry approaches performer safety and reveal why Michael wasn't just the king of pop, but also a true leader who put people before profit. If you're ready to see how real leaders respond in crisis moments and discover the hidden story that changed concert safety forever, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because this story will show you what happens when compassion meets crisis under the brightest spotlights in entertainment. Let's dive into the day Michael Jackson proved that sometimes stopping is more powerful than performing. To understand the magnitude of what happened that August afternoon, you need to know Maria Santos' story and why this rehearsal meant everything to her. At 23 years old, Maria was living the dream that thousands of dancers around the world could only fantasize about. She had been selected from over 2,000 auditions to be one of Michael Jackson's backup dancers for the Bad World Tour, the most ambitious concert series ever planned. Maria grew up in a working-class Puerto Rican family in the Bronx, where dance wasn't just her passion, it was her escape from a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce and dreams felt impossible. Her mother, Carmen Santos, worked double shifts as a hospital cleaner to pay for Maria's dance lessons, sacrificing her own comfort so her daughter could chase a dream that seemed unreachable. Maria would practice in our tiny apartment until midnight, Carmen later recalled. She would clear out our living room and dance to Michael Jackson's music, learning every move from his videos. She said one day she would dance with him, and I thought it was just a beautiful dream. I never imagined it would actually happen. When Maria was 19, she moved to Los Angeles with $300 in her pocket and a suitcase full of dance clothes. She worked as a waitress during the day and attended every dance class she could afford at night. She slept on friends' couches, ate one meal a day to save money, and spent every free moment perfecting her craft. The audition for Michael's Bad Tour was Maria's fifth attempt to work with a major artist. She had been rejected by Madonna's team, missed callbacks for Janet Jackson, and been told she was too ethnic for a pop tour that needed a cleaner look. Each rejection had crushed her spirit a little more, but her mother's words kept her going. Mija, sometimes God closes doors so you'll be ready when the right one opens. When Maria got the call that she had been selected for Michael's tour, she collapsed on her apartment floor and cried for an hour. This wasn't just a job. It was validation that all the sacrifice, all the struggle, all the nights wondering if she should give up and go home had been worth it. The rehearsal process for the Bad World Tour was legendary in the entertainment industry for its intensity and Michael's perfectionist standards. Michael believed that every movement, every gesture, every facial expression had to be precise because anything less than perfection was disrespectful to the fans who would pay to see the show. Michael would make us run through the same 30-second sequence 40 times until it was exactly right, remembered Tony Martinez, one of the other backup dancers. He wasn't mean about it, but he was relentless. He would say, "Our fans deserve perfection, and perfection requires repetition." For Maria, the pressure was intense but also exhilarating. She was dancing with Michael Jackson, learning from the master himself, and preparing for a world tour that would be seen by millions of people. Every day felt like a masterclass in performance, professionalism, and dedication. But the schedule was brutal. Rehearsals ran 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. The choreography was physically demanding, requiring stamina, precision, and emotional intensity that pushed every dancer to their absolute limits. The studio was kept hot to simulate concert conditions, and dancers were expected to maintain peak performance energy throughout the entire session. Maria threw herself into the rehearsals with everything she had. She arrived early, stayed late, and pushed her body beyond its limits because she knew how rare this opportunity was and how many talented dancers would kill to be in her position. What Maria didn't realize was that her determination to prove herself worthy of dancing with Michael Jackson was slowly becoming dangerous to her health. She had been skipping meals to avoid feeling sluggish during rehearsals, drinking excessive amounts of caffeine to maintain energy, and ignoring warning signs that her body was approaching its breaking point. The morning of August 12, 1987, Maria woke up feeling dizzy and nauseous, but she convinced herself it was just nerves about perfecting a particularly challenging sequence they would be rehearsing that day. She had been having trouble sleeping, her appetite had disappeared, and she had lost nearly 15 pounds since rehearsals began, but she interpreted these as signs of dedication rather than distress signals from her body. I knew something was wrong, Maria later admitted, but I was terrified that if I showed any weakness, I would be replaced. There were hundreds of dancers who would have taken my spot in a heartbeat. As Maria prepared for what would become the most important rehearsal of her life, she had no idea that her determination to push through at any cost was about to create a crisis that would change not just her own life, but Michael Jackson's entire approach to leadership and performer care. The day that would change everything began like any other at Quincy Jones Studio, with Michael Jackson arriving at exactly 9 a.m., carrying his signature black fedora and a notebook filled with detailed choreography notes. The studio was already buzzing with activity as dancers stretched, warmed up, and reviewed the complex sequences they would be perfecting that day. Michael's attention to detail was legendary, and today they would be working on one of the most physically demanding numbers in the entire show, Beat It, which required precise coordination between 8 dancers, dramatic lighting changes, and Michael's most athletic choreography. The sequence included multiple lifts, rapid formation changes, and a climactic section where all the dancers had to maintain perfect synchronization while executing high-energy moves for over 4 minutes straight. Today we beat it, Michael announced to the assembled dancers. This number is the heart of the show. It has to be flawless, it has to be powerful, and it has to look effortless even though we all know it's the hardest thing we do. Maria positioned herself in the formation, feeling the familiar rush of excitement mixed with determination that came with dancing Michael's choreography. But as the first run-through began, she noticed something was different. Her legs felt heavier than usual, her breathing was more labored, and the studio lights seemed unusually bright and hot. "Focus, Maria," she told herself. "This is what you trained for. This is your moment." The first hour of rehearsal went smoothly, with Michael stopping periodically to adjust formations and perfect timing. His feedback was detailed and constructive, and Maria felt herself rising to meet his standards despite the unusual fatigue she was experiencing. But as they moved into the second hour, the intensity increased dramatically. Michael wanted to run through the entire Beat It sequence 5 times in a row to build the stamina they would need for live performances. This meant maintaining peak energy and perfect form for over 20 minutes of continuous high-impact dancing. During the third run-through, Maria began to feel lightheaded, but she pushed through, telling herself that everyone was tired and this was just part of the process. During the fourth run-through, her vision began to blur slightly, and she had to grip another dancer's arm during a formation change to steady herself. "You okay?" whispered Jessica Chin, the dancer beside her. "Just tired," Maria replied, not wanting to admit that something felt seriously wrong. As they began the fifth and final run-through, Michael called out from his position at the front of the formation, "This is it, everyone. This one has to be perfect. Give me everything you've got." Maria summoned every ounce of strength she had left, determined to prove that she belonged in this elite group of performers. She executed every move with precision, maintained her smile even as her body screamed for rest, and pushed through the growing dizziness that was making the studio spin around her. But as they reached the climactic final section of Beat It, something went terribly wrong. Maria felt her heart racing erratically, her vision darkened around the edges, and suddenly the studio floor rushed up to meet her as her legs completely gave out beneath her. The sound of Maria hitting the hardwood floor echoed through the studio like a gunshot, immediately stopping the music and sending shockwaves through everyone present. She lay motionless, unconscious, her body having finally reached its absolute limit. For a moment that felt like eternity, everyone stood frozen, processing what had just happened. Then chaos erupted as dancers rushed toward Maria, voices shouted overlapping instructions, and someone screamed for someone else to call 911. But Michael Jackson's response was immediate, instinctive, and revealed everything about his character in that critical moment. Michael Jackson's reaction to Maria Santos' collapse revealed leadership qualities that went far beyond anything he had ever displayed on stage. While everyone else stood paralyzed by shock or rushed around in panic, Michael dropped to his knees beside Maria with the calm authority of someone trained in crisis management. "Everyone step back and give her space to breathe," Michael commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos with clear authority. "Jessica, call 911 immediately. Tony, turn off all the studio lights except the work lights. Carmen, get me some water and a clean towel." Michael gently checked Maria's pulse and breathing, skills he had learned during safety training early in his career after witnessing several stage accidents. Her pulse was weak but steady, her breathing shallow but regular. She was alive, but clearly in medical distress. "Maria," Micheal said softly, kneeling beside her and speaking directly into her ear. "Maria, can you hear me? You're safe. Help is coming." As the other dancers watched in amazement, Micheal removed his jacket and placed it carefully under Maria's head, then took her hand and began speaking to her in a calm, reassuring voice, even though she remained unconscious. "You did beautifully today, Maria. You've been working so hard, and I'm so proud of you. But right now, you need to rest and let us take care of you." Vincent Patterson, Michael's choreographer, approached cautiously. "Micheal, the paramedics are on their way. Should we continue rehearsing with the other dancers while we wait?" Michael's response was immediate and unequivocal. "No. Rehearsal is over for today. Everyone sits down and waits until we know Maria is okay." "But Micheal," Vincent pressed, "we've only got 3 weeks until the tour starts, and we're already behind schedule. We could work with the other dancers while Maria gets medical attention." Micheal looked up at Vincent with an expression that was both gentle and absolutely firm. "Vincent, if we continue rehearsing while Maria is unconscious on the floor, what does that tell every dancer here about how much we value them as human beings? What does that tell them about what happens if they get hurt?" The studio fell completely silent as Michael's words sank in. This wasn't just about Maria's immediate medical needs. This was about the message they would send to everyone about whether people mattered more than performances. When the paramedics arrived, Micheal gave them a detailed account of what had happened, how long Maria had been unconscious, and what he had observed about her condition. He then asked a question that surprised everyone, including the medical team. "Is it safe for her to continue with this level of physical activity once she recovers? And if not, what do we need to change to make sure this never happens to anyone else?" As Maria was loaded onto a stretcher, she briefly regained consciousness and looked around in confusion and embarrassment. Seeing Micheal beside her, she immediately tried to apologize. "Micheal, I'm so sorry. I ruined rehearsal. I let everyone down." Micheal took her hand and looked directly into her eyes. "Maria, you didn't let anyone down. We let you down by not taking better care of you. That changes starting right now." As the ambulance doors closed and Maria was rushed to the hospital, Micheal gathered the remaining dancers in a circle and said something that would revolutionize how his tours were managed from that day forward. "What happened to Maria is my responsibility as much as it is anyone's. We've been so focused on perfection that we forgot the most important thing, taking care of each other. That changes today." Michael's next decision shocked his entire management team and would set a new standard for performer safety across the entertainment industry. The meeting that took place in Quincy Jones Studio after Maria's ambulance disappeared into Los Angeles traffic was unlike any production meeting in entertainment history. Micheal Jackson, still visibly shaken by what had happened, gathered his entire team, dancers, choreographers, tour managers, and production staff, and made announcements that would fundamentally change how his organization operated. "Before we do anything else," Micheal began, "I want everyone to understand something clearly. What happened to Maria today was not an accident. It was the result of a system that prioritizes perfection over people, and I take full responsibility for creating that environment." Frank Dillio, Michael's manager, tried to interject. "Micheal, accidents happen. Maria pushed herself too hard. We can't." Micheal held up his hand to stop him. "Frank, with respect, that's exactly the wrong way to think about this. Maria didn't push herself too hard. We created conditions where she felt she had to choose between her health and her career. No one should ever have to make that choice." Micheal then announced a series of changes that sent shockwaves through his management team and would eventually become industry standards. Effective immediately, no rehearsal will exceed 8 hours in a single day. We're hiring a medical professional to be present at every rehearsal and performance. We're implementing mandatory nutrition breaks every 2 hours. And most importantly, any dancer who feels unwell or needs rest will be encouraged to speak up without fear of being replaced. The financial implications were significant. Shorter rehearsal days meant extending the rehearsal period, which meant additional studio rental costs, more catering expenses, and delayed tour dates that could cost millions in revenue. "Micheal," said tour director Kenny Ortega, "I understand the intention, but we've got contractual obligations. The tour is scheduled to begin in 3 weeks. If we implement these changes, we'll have to postpone the opening dates." Michael's response revealed the depth of his conviction. "Then we postpone the opening dates. I would rather disappoint fans with a delayed show than risk having another dancer collapse because we prioritized our schedule over their safety. But Micheal wasn't finished. He also announced that he would personally visit Maria in the hospital every day until she was cleared to return to work, and that her position on the tour was guaranteed regardless of her recovery timeline. Maria earned her spot on this tour through talent and hard work. A medical emergency doesn't change that. Her position will be held for her, and if she needs additional recovery time, we'll work around her schedule. The dancers in the room were visibly emotional. Several began crying as they realized that Micheal was willing to sacrifice millions of dollars and postpone his most important tour to protect their well-being. Tony Martinez, one of the veteran dancers, spoke up, "Micheal, we've all worked with artists who talk about caring for their people, but when push comes to shove, the show always comes first. You're actually putting your money where your mouth is." Micheal nodded solemnly. "Tony, I learned something today that I should have known all along. The show isn't more important than the people who make the show possible. Without you, there is no show. So taking care of you isn't just the right thing to do, it's the only thing that makes sense." The changes Micheal implemented had immediate and dramatic effects. Word spread quickly through the entertainment industry about what had happened at Quincy Jones Studio, and Michael's response became a case study in crisis leadership and performer care. Within 24 hours, Micheal had hired Dr. Sarah Chen, a sports medicine physician, to oversee the health and safety of all tour personnel. He also brought a nutritionist to ensure dancers were properly fueled for the physical demands of the show, and implemented a buddy system where dancers were paired to watch out for each other's well-being. When Maria returned to rehearsals 2 weeks later, fully recovered and cleared by multiple doctors, she found a completely transformed environment. Rehearsals were intense but sustainable, breaks were mandatory and respected, and an atmosphere of mutual care had replaced the previous culture of pushing through at any cost. "It felt like a different world," Maria later recalled. "Not less professional but more human. We were still perfecting every detail, but we were doing it in a way that honored our bodies and our limits." The tour, delayed by 10 days, opened to rave reviews not just for the performances, but for the visible health and energy of all the performers. Critics noted that the dancers seemed more vibrant and sustainable throughout the lengthy shows, and attributed this to what industry insiders were calling the Jackson standard for performer care. But the most profound impact was personal. Micheal's response to Maria's collapse created a bond of loyalty and respect among his touring company that lasted for decades. Many of the dancers from that tour continued working with Micheal throughout his career, and several went on to become choreographers and directors who implemented similar safety standards in their own productions. The story of Maria Santos' collapse and Micheal Jackson's response became legendary in the entertainment industry, proving that true leadership isn't about driving people to their limits. It's about creating conditions where people can perform at their best while maintaining their health and dignity. Years later, when Maria had become a successful choreographer herself, she would tell young dancers about the day Micheal Jackson taught her that caring for your people isn't just good leadership, it's the only way to build something that lasts. The transformation that occurred at Quincy Jones Studio in the weeks following Maria's collapse created ripple effects that extended far beyond Micheal Jackson's Bad World Tour. The changes Micheal implemented became a template that influenced performer safety standards across the entire entertainment industry, proving that one leader's courage to prioritize people over profit could spark a revolution in how artists treat their teams. Dr. Sarah Chen, the sports medicine physician Micheal hired, later established the industry's first comprehensive health and safety protocols for touring artists. Her guidelines, which became known as the Jackson Protocols, were eventually adopted by major artists, venues, and production companies worldwide. Michael's response to Maria's collapse wasn't just about fixing one problem, Dr. Chen reflected years later. It was about acknowledging that the entertainment industry had normalized dangerous working conditions and deciding to lead by example in changing that culture. The financial impact of Michael's decisions was significant but proved to be worthwhile. While the tour's opening was delayed and production costs increased by approximately 15%, the reduced injury rates, improved performer morale, and positive press coverage more than compensated for the additional expenses. Maria Santos returned to the tour stronger than ever, and her experience became a powerful example for other performers struggling with the pressure to push through physical distress. She often spoke about how Michael's response had saved not just her career, but potentially her life. "I was heading toward serious health problems because I thought showing weakness would end my career," Maria shared in interviews. "Micheal showed me that real strength means knowing when to rest, and that leaders who truly care about you will support that choice." The buddy system Micheal implemented became particularly effective, with dancers reporting that having a partner specifically assigned to watch out for their well-being created both accountability and support that prevented numerous potential injuries and health scares. Tony Martinez, who was paired with a younger dancer named Carlos Rivera, described how the system worked. It wasn't about policing each other, but about having someone who knew you well enough to notice when you were pushing too hard or not taking care of yourself. Carlos caught several times when I was dehydrated or overly fatigued before it became a problem. Micheal's personal involvement in the recovery process also set new standards for how artists relate to their teams. His daily hospital visits to Maria, his willingness to adjust choreography to accommodate her recovery needs, and his public statements about prioritizing performer health created a culture where asking for help was seen as professional rather than weak. When Micheal died in 2009, Maria was among the speakers at his memorial service. She shared how his response to her collapse had taught her about leadership, compassion, and the courage required to do the right thing even when it's expensive or inconvenient. Micheal could have replaced me and continued rehearsals that day, Maria said in her tribute. Instead, he stopped everything to make sure I was okay, and then he changed his entire operation to make sure it wouldn't happen to anyone else. That's not just being a good boss, that's being a good human being. The entertainment industry continues to reference Micheal's handling of the rehearsal crisis as an example of transformational leadership. Business schools use the case study to teach about authentic leadership, crisis management, and the long-term benefits of prioritizing employee well-being. Dr. Chen's research showed that productions implementing Jackson protocols experienced 60% fewer injuries, 40% lower turnover rates, and consistently higher quality performances due to improved performer health and morale. Micheal proved that you don't have to choose between excellence and humanity, Dr. Chen concluded. In fact, treating people well is often the path to the highest levels of performance and success. Today, Maria Santos Chen, she later married Dr. Chen's son, runs a non-profit organization that provides health and safety education to young performers entering the entertainment industry. Her work continues the mission that began with her collapse at Quincy Jones Studio, ensuring that pursuing artistic dreams never requires sacrificing health or well-being. This incredible story shows us that true leadership isn't about pushing people to their breaking points. It's about creating environments where people can thrive while doing their best work. Michael Jackson's response to a crisis revealed character that went far beyond his musical genius, proving that sometimes the most important performance is simply taking care of the people who trust you to lead them. What would change in our workplaces, our teams, and our relationships if we all followed Michael's example of stopping everything when someone needs help? How can we create cultures where people feel safe asking for support instead of pushing through to the point of collapse? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you to think differently about leadership and taking care of your team, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to remember that people always come before performance. Subscribe and ring that notification bell because we have more powerful stories that prove true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them past their limits. Until next time, remember, the greatest leaders are those who know when to stop the show to save the person.